bank. Apologies for a little technical hitch a little earlier on. So you're mentioning a little earlier that the bulk of the project portfolio for FTB is focused on transportation, energy, water and sanitation. But I'd like to move the conversation forward a little bit towards agriculture, because it made up about 6% of the bank's lending portfolio in Kenya by the end of March. But we're also seeing urban households struggling to cope with a surge in food prices amid 2 years of income decline here in Kenya. Why does agriculture account for a small fraction of the portfolio, even though on the consumer side, household expenditure on food is a significant part of their spending?
Thank you to have me once more. At the African Development Bank, we conceive agriculture in a very holistic way, not only for producing crops and livestock. Some of the investments we have made in public goods, such as transport, particularly feeder roads, water and energy, contribute to agriculture as a sector, because farmers need these facilities to grow, preserve, and move their products. With regards to our Feed Africa initiative, which is our strategy for transforming agriculture, currently it accounts for about 16% of our active commitments, of which the major contributors are transport and water operations. This reflects the developmental approach we employ in designing and implementing these operations. In particular, road projects are implemented with integrated approach to rural development, involving the construction of access roads to production and agricultural centers, and roadside amenities such as markets to benefit road users and roadside traders. The water sector operations also adopt resource management approach to address not only the low water supply and sanitation service levels in small towns and neighboring rural areas, but also for irrigation and in arid and semi-arid areas in particular. In Kenya, we have invested more than 140 million directly on agriculture with some tangible examples. For example, 1.5 million households are benefiting from improvements in agriculture. 825 kilometers of feeder roads have been built or rehabilitated. 60,000 hectares of land are under improved management. 750,000 people are using improved farming technologies, and over 1 million new jobs have been created in this sector by the bank's intervention in the country.
Right. So with cities, though, being the key drivers of future growth, what do authorities need to do from a policy perspective to make it easier for MSMEs to grow, to thrive, and to formalize as well?
Now, many countries in the region have embarked on a private sector-led growth, recognizing that over 90% of the private sector is dominated by the MSMEs, and many of which are likely domiciled in cities, and they're operating in the informal sector, and they are engaged in diverse activities from the tertiary sector. While they have contributed to the growth of cities, the fact that most MSMEs operate in the informal sector constrains their ability to pay taxes and obtain critical government services in return. The MSMEs make significant contribution to the GDP of our countries, and they generate nearly twice employment opportunities than large-scale enterprises. They also stimulate the local demand for new goods and services, and they contribute to the establishment of new middle class in the countries and the region at large. Therefore, supporting the growth of the MSMEs and formalizing the activities remain critical to support faster growth of our cities. Despite these benefits MSMEs bring to the economy, they face numerous challenges that government authorities in the region need to address to make it easier for them to grow, to thrive, and become formalized. And these challenges are inadequate physical infrastructure, business environment is not conducive to MSMEs, there is lack of adequate finance and limited access to credit, taxation policies sometimes are not MSMEs friendly, MSMEs are unable to adapt to rapid technological changes, and sometimes this may be due to the financial constraints for such needed investments. There is inadequate knowledge and skills for some of the MSMEs managers, and there is lack of adequate operations and management systems for them. So governments need targeted policies to address these challenges, as MSMEs are key drivers of economic growth. as has been seen in other countries and regions. At the African Development Bank, we do recognize these challenges, and we are helping the countries through budget support operations that we have inbuilt designs for policy changes in the countries to introduce legal, regulatory, and policy reforms to unlock MSMEs potentials. We also have lending operations through commercial banks and national development banks to support MSMEs. And we have other forms. The infrastructure we build help MSMEs to lower the cost of doing business, especially the cross-border routes and one-stop border posts that we have supported many governments in the region to build.
All right, one last question for you. Energy demand. As cities grow right across Africa, energy demand is going to just keep growing. Kenya at the moment has over 90% of its power on the grid coming in from renewable sources. But in the bank's view, should countries be encouraged to invest a lot more in off-grid distributed power systems in order to essentially ensure that the energy is available, but we're not raising emissions at the same time?
Well, like you said, Kenya has made tremendous progress in greening its electricity generation, but currently with over 90% of the power coming from grid-tied renewable energy sources. And just like the case of Kenya, other countries also have some of these challenges because Kenya, they've increased their transmission, their distribution networks, but not every part of the country is connected to the grid. Sometimes there are resource constraints, and sometimes some of these areas are not easily accessible. So the cost of getting energy to these areas is quite high and not economically and financially attractive. So in such cases, off-grid solutions through solar PV, wind, and hybrid systems will be handy in reaching these areas. But in the case of Kenya also, Kenya has noted that it's important that in pursuing that they have to pursue off-grid solutions as a way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the energy sector. So, and Kenya also recognizes that while the energy and transport sectors are responsible currently for only 18%, the tendency is that it will grow in the future, and most of the greenhouse gas emissions will actually come from the energy sector as this sector becomes more and more used across the country, and there is accessibility. So investments in off-grid renewables, especially solar PV, will represent an opportunity for Kenya and other countries to enhance electricity access while they are reducing their energy sector emissions. So, and I think it's a gradual process. And as countries like Kenya that have prepared their NDCs to manage this climate change come to terms with it, we are going to gradually see a shift towards solar PV and other opportunities that have less greenhouse gas emissions. And the bank remains constantly engaged in supporting countries in conducting studies on how they can have an optimal mix of all the opportunities that they have in the energy sector.